have the thesis, try to, or what you're continuing developing your thesis and trying to stick to it. The second part of it, what we want to make sure is even if you have a thesis, then how do you find the companies, right? How do you generate the deal flow? So we're gonna bring Christine Herron up here. She was a director. She's a director at Intel Capital also since 2010. She has been advisor to us at 500. It's been like since the beginning, also at StartX. So definitely a lot of experience on early stage and the queen of generating deal flow.
Oh, God, oh my gosh, that's pressure I cannot hold up to. All right, are things just going to happen here? Is this going to come on? There. All right, so if you had a slide, you would see a slide that this is to talk not just about how to generate deal flow, but more importantly, how to keep the deal flow once you start it, because there are many ways one can lose the train of good things. Wait, things are happening. It's very exciting. There we go. So I've been in the role that most people think about for deal flow is, you're a hunter. You're a good hunter. Can you find deals? So I'd like to think that I can find deals, so I've claimed the role of VC deal hunter. And more importantly, a brand builder. I think a lot of folks may not realize, although perhaps Pedro has informed you sufficiently, that it's not just about sales, it's about marketing. So sales and marketing is going to drive your deal flow in a big way. And I think what's most important about keeping that deal flow is when you go out to raise LP money, again, this should be a strong theme for all the roles in venture capital. If you don't have deal flow, no one's going to give you money because they don't think you'll be able to spend it well. So if you can show that you're invited into great syndicates, if you've co-invested with the right people again and again, those are good things. It's one of the signs of good deal flow, not the only one. It's an unfair advantage though. So any unfair advantage you can get when everyone's money is green is a good thing. So I have the opposite slides. I have the David McClure style slides. I have some just pictures, although they're all suitable for children. So first thing about deal flow is know yourself, and this goes back to perhaps it's being thesis driven, perhaps it's not, because not everyone is thesis driven. But you should know what your deals look like. So if you're out and you're investing, someone should be able to say, a few years from now, once your fund is up and running, what is a deal that's like, that's a new fund deal, that's an Intel Capital deal, that's a Quotidian deal. People need to know what fits into that blank, and it's up to you to fill that blank in for them. Otherwise, they won't know when to think of you, they won't know when to send you things. And more importantly, if someone sees a deal that's like, wow, I love this company, but it's just not a great fit for us, it's a little too, So when I was at First Round, for example, I would see great deals that were not seed stage deals, and they just, happen to be through relationships. And I'd say, oh, well, let me send you to so-and-so because you're a great fit for them. But if I'm not aware of what that great fit might be, I can't pass it along. So again, it's your job to make sure people know what your great fits are. And if you don't know, this is because I've gone through this exercise in fund building before. It's very useful to sit down and say, well, let me look at all the deals I've been doing that just felt right to me intuitively. What did they have in common? And it might be something that drives the thesis. It might be a certain thing about the types of economics in those businesses. It might be the types of entrepreneurs. And I will go ahead and insert the jokes about people liking white Ivy League educated men. That's a thesis. But you might have something in common in your previous deals. And if you can identify it, again, it's very helpful. Some people like humble entrepreneurs. And that was one of the things I identified. I like humble entrepreneurs. People who scrapped their way to get to a certain place. And so I just learned, people know that that's the kind of person I like to work with. I see a lot more of those types of introductions. You can also do size, stage, sector, but those are kind of the obvious ones. So coffee is for closers. And if you have not seen this movie, it is a lot of fun. And so one of the things you should do when you first are trying to get a deal pipeline established is not sit there with your hat in your hand and go out asking for deal charity, but rather get out and do that work yourself. Get a shovel and start digging. And that means, number one, look at all the deals you wish you were in. Take those deals and look at who invested in them and what rounds they invested in. And whoever invested in those deals before the time you would have wanted to invest, those are your new best friends. You need to go out and build those relationships. You need to go out and see who influenced, who are the advisors for those companies early on. And that's, again, it's simple stuff. A lot of people don't bother to do it, but it's a great way to start from scratch for how your network should evolve based on what you want to be investing in. You can also take a look at all the usual stuff, the news, the blogs, go to the right conferences, press the flesh. There is no substitute for a little sweat equity, and so building some sweat equity into that is a good way to go. There was my first job in venture capital, and it's going to date myself. I can't help date myself when I do this. So in my first venture capital job, we didn't have computers at our desks the same way that we do now. They didn't have an internet connection. They had a local connection. So in that job, I didn't email entrepreneurs. I called them. Hi, entrepreneur. And so my job was to go out, find interesting spaces, cultivate relationships, find great things for my fund to invest in. And this was at Geo Capital, which was a fund in the New York area back in the day. And I actually had the metrics that I was supposed to tag. So I needed to talk to at least 20 new entrepreneurs a week that I didn't know that looked interesting. To get to those 20, this is more of a sales slide, remember. To get to those 20 that I had a conversation with, first conversation with, I was probably looking at about 40 or 50 a week to say like, that's not interesting to me, that's not interesting to me. And this is, with some filter for areas I would look. So again, get your shovel out, just start digging, build relationships directly, find influencers, find investors, and keep people aware that you exist. Because often what will happen is if you are just sitting behind a desk and doing all of that work remotely, people forget you're around. And often when I meet a great person, that's not good for me, but they might be great for Dave, they might be great for someone at First Round, they might be great for someone at Lightspeed. What's going to happen is if I haven't talked to someone from one of those firms in the very recent past, I might not think of them. Because someone says, who should I talk to? And you have to have an answer at the tip of your tongue. And you know what? Whoever you've seen most recently is who's going to be on the tip of your tongue. So you have to actually get out and remind people around. So fear of missing out is a very well-known venture phenomenon. You do not want this to be you. And if you want an email inbox that is full of crap you don't care about, by all means, don't tell people what you want. So you have to define your leads filter very early. And it might be the thesis. It might be size and stage. There are a number of things that you could use for that. But whatever it is, get that very well defined. And make sure people know, or you will be overwhelmed. It is very easy to have an inbox that creeps up and up and up. You have people destroying your reputation because you're responding more and more slowly to your inbound. And the things you really want to see, because they're well referred, kind of get lost. So again, identify this early, and so you are not going to get overwhelmed by it. Some numbers, we talked about that, sort of 20 new companies a week, if you're in that role where it's just your job to look for deals. Even just going to demo days is going to start stacking numbers up on you. So if you go to Y Combinator, StartX, and 500 Startups, and I would have to say AngelPad, got AngelPad in the room too. If you just go to those alone, so that's 4, and they're each going to have a few classes per year, you are easily going to see more than 400 companies a year just from going to demo days. Right, and they're all going to know you went there, and you're going to be in the list of investor attendees, and people are going to reach out to you. So the more you can make sure people know what you like, again, don't let this happen to you. It's no fun. This happens to me all the time. So sharing your passion. So one of the things I started doing, because I really didn't like when I had to be on the phone all that time in that job. So one of the things I started doing when social media came along was like, holy crap, this is perfect for an introvert. It's very tiring to talk to one person at a time. So I do things like this, where I can talk to lots of people at one time. And so, for example, all of you will now know that I do consumer internet and digital media investing. I prefer early stage. Ideally, Series A or seed, and I like humble entrepreneurs. So see, now you all know, and that was so easy. I didn't have to talk to everybody. So to the extent you have points of view, or you can make observations that are useful to folks, lessons learned from the companies you work with. I love to talk about my companies, so Goldbelly, Funders Club, Store & Be, 3 marketplaces I invest in. I love to talk about them as an example, because now people know, hey, she likes marketplaces. I've promoted my companies, and I get to share some useful information from time to time about marketplace economics. So when I do that, that allows me to leverage my whatever platform I'm on, and at the same time, again, cultivate the inbound, because what you can't possibly do is boil the ocean yourself and assume you can find everyone you would want. You have to do some of that. You have to get your shovel out, and do the sales, you have to also do the marketing. And this is your marketing. This is the marketing you can do as a partner or a deal sourcer with a firm. There's not a lot that you're going to do otherwise, because when people look for a venture partner, they're going to look for the partner in the firm. And you've got brand around your firm. There's going to be a network, a thesis around your firm. But more importantly, people do care about the partner. And they're going to have that personal connection with you, because you are going to be the one that they call at midnight when something goes horribly wrong. So if they don't want to call you at midnight when something goes horribly wrung, you've not done a good job with your marketing. You've not done a good job identifying, who would be a good match for you. Last slide, because I do want to have some time for questions. And we needed a slide of llamas just because it's so topical right now. I figure it's better to have a slide of llamas than of Ellen Pao, so we went with the llamas. So reciprocity is a very, very important theme in the venture community. And it's important not just between venture capitalists, but in between entrepreneurs and investors. Some of my best leads, in fact, probably all of my best leads that are inbound, will come not from someone necessarily that's a CEO, and I do get great leads from my CEOs, but also people I've turned down. And it's important to remember that you can turn people down in a way that's respectful, that is adding value to what they do. I have a lot of conversations where, we'll be 15 minutes into the hour that got booked, and I could pull out my phone and click away, which is generally quite rude. Or I could sit there and say, okay, this is not something I'm going to invest in, but let's just talk, and I'm happy to give you what advice I can. You've got 45 minutes. Those guys give me the best leads, because they're like, wow, she was so great to talk to. So think about the relationships you're building and what reputation you're setting, pretty much in everything you do. And so it's investing in those one-on-one conversations. It's investing in the community, going out and doing things that might not ever result in an actual deal, but again, just help with the marketing, help with that investment, because people will know that you're someone that's good to work with. And that is, I think, all I have prepared on deal flow. I'm happy to take a bunch of questions. Please do, because I like to answer them. That's where all the fun is. Oh yeah, you for sure.
Not a softball. So what would you say about the funds that have done the exact opposite, that are being really successful right now, particularly Spark Capital, which they just basically said, we like to invest in stuff that we like. We bring it in, we use it. Twitter, they brought it in, they just used it, they thought it was cool. They invested in it. They invested in bikes. They invested in glasses, fund. And they said 250,000 up to 25 million or 50 million or whatever the hell it is.
Right.
They're just going to do what they want.
Right. I think that's a luxury that 95% of investors don't have. And so I can speak to the 5%. I mean, that's Diana. So if someone goes out to raise, we're going to invest 250K to 25 million in just stuff we like.
Right.
It's going to be very hard for them to get LP money unless they're bringing it to the table themselves. And I suspect those are not the folks that are sitting in a room looking for advice on deal flow as well.
But they didn't say that in their first
Yeah, and that's the other point. Is in the first fund, you don't do that.
They were in the first fund.
Ooh, here we go.
They were much more traditional in the first fund. But then they earned the right
Yeah.
they wanted.
So that's a good follow-on,
Yeah.
because guys like Lightspeed, they're doing Honest Company, Jessica Alba deals. Once you have a brand, then what you're saying is, if you have a brand and you're successful, then you can branch out.
Yeah, I feel like I should. Let's get the brand. Here we go. There's the brand slide.
A couple questions. One, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on thesis investing. And the second is, when you talk about deal flow, do you look at a certain number of companies per month, or how do you quantify deal
Yeah.
flow?
So, and I think again, it kind of depends on the issue you have. So, in the 90s, when I was with Geo Capital Partners, that was the get out the shovel and just start digging and smile and dial. And this was TA Associates and Summit Partners, and Geo Capital went to that list. So there are folks that do that, that have these banks of associates. But I think that being thesis driven does allow you to be more selective. I think this is a lot more powerful, both in terms of LP fundraising and in terms of investing it, because I think, Pedro made the comment about, it's a great deal, but then someone says, oh, so how are we doing? And you're like, I don't know, because I don't have a bunch of others that I can compare it to. And so, so at first round, there was a lot around the stage. not necessarily any thesis or generalists around a stage at the time I was there. And in that situation, we had so many companies that we did clusters. So we had a big cluster around ad technology, for example. So you could do smart things and benchmarking in ad tech. You know, one of the things that Intel Capital does, because it's so large, so Intel Capital, where I am now, has 400 active companies at any one time, right? And so that's split up between, you know, a dozen different teams that act like little funds under the umbrella. And so on the internet team, one of the theses that we had was around marketplaces. So we went out and did some marketplace investing. Another one was around marketing platforms. So for example, we thought, hey, you know what, a lot of spend is moving from the CIO's office to the CMO's office. And the CMO is going to continue to get share of wallet, you know, from an organization's IT budget. So let's go out and go after the CMO's, you know, decisions. And so we now have, you know, a dozen investments in marketing. So, you know, whether it's Sprinkler or X+1 or SmartZip, things like that. So I do think you need some balance because if you're only thesis driven and you're doing earlier stage investing, you're going to miss things. You know, and so the ballpark that we did was, let's assume that 80% of the investments that we make are going to be more thesis driven, and they'll, you know, probably have 4 or 5 at any given time about some major trends that we believe are disruptive that we're looking to invest against. But then there's that 20% for shit we just don't know about yet, right? It doesn't exist yet. You know, that's when I show up and, you know, there's this company, and I'll give them the hat tip. And there's this company called Easy Robot up in Canada, which I love. You know, and basically like, well, we're going to be the robotic operating system, and we're going to, you know, we're going to do this open source hardware. We're going to do the hardware for now. It plugs and plays, and it's beautiful, but we really don't care about that. We want to be the open source. We want to be the brain, right? We want to have the operating system. And I was like, whoa, this is blowing my mind about the community. And it's like, I get community. I understand all the things on the services side around community and being able to sell behaviors, like you can do the Gangnam Style dance for $1. So I really get all that. And I was not looking at robotics. Like, that was not a space I was interested in. But the ability to sort of go through there and have all the stuff I do know about, that's, you know, that's a huge part of what the economics and the growth engines for that business are. It gets really interesting. So you've got to leave room for that. If you don't have room for that, you know, whatever your number is, that 20% serendipity or discovery of new stuff, you will miss things. So, another picture.
Hi there. I just wanted to know, do you think working for Intel Capital and being associated with a massive company like Intel, does that help you or hinder you both in terms of finding good deal flow and also finding LPs?
Right. Well, I don't have to find LPs because I pull from the pocket directly. It's a large enough pocket where there's plenty of money in there. So I think it depends. So much to the extent there. So if I was doing data center investing on behalf of Intel, it's immensely helpful. That's a good brand. Like, the firm brand is very, very strong around data center and cloud server related items. In consumer internet, it was a hindrance. And so when I first, I was recruited to join from First Round Capital, and I was very direct with Mike Buckley, who had brought me in. I was like, all right, I'm going to probably spend about 18 months not really doing a lot of deals, if any. I'm going to spend 18 months evangelizing. And when I sort of look at that first year of metrics, I think I spoke at an average of like 3 or 4 conferences per month. I was tweeting like mad. You know, I was doing tons of mentoring. And almost all of those conversations in those first 12 months, I would say, blah, 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 and they're like, you left First Round to do what? And why would you leave? What was the same? It was like, sort of explain, like, well, we're building this practices, and this is why it's useful, consumer internet. We're not just big iron. And so there was a lot of work to do to sort of establish that brand presence. But then once that's established, you know, now it's fine, because people, we've done a bunch of deals in the space now, so that's always helpful. It's, you know, it's not me people listen to. It's going to be the folks I've invested in, and either we've been good to them or we haven't. Again, it's all reputation. So I think that has since become better, but it was actually a hindrance up front, just because people knew it for doing as far away from the internet as possible.
Just one follow-up question. How much work do you need to do to, I guess, work through the internal diplomacy of working for a really large corporation?
Sure. Do you work for a large company, or? It all becomes clear. All right, so happy to talk offline. Every corporate venture group is a bit different. And so at Intel, we do have both strategic and financial objectives that we've got to hit. And so I think most people don't realize that if you're a top quartile investor inside Intel Capital, you have IRR, 10-year IRR that's more than 20%, right? I mean, you don't stay at Intel if you can't put the numbers up. So we do have that. But then as far as the strategic imperative goes, we have teams are associated with a single business unit, typically. I have no business unit. I'm the team that's the eyes and ears. What's the stuff that we don't know about yet? The thing that I have to go prove to the rest of the world that we actually do. And so for those folks, it depends on which business unit it is. Typically, you want somewhere between business units engagement. That's going to be a longer, slower deal if you have something commercial between you. Most of what we do is actually business unit aligned, which is we're ecosystem investing. This is something that will make the general ecosystem thrive that we're putting a product into, and we want that to be thriving for our product. So anyway, that's it. And I think we're out of time for questions. Sorry.
We're out of time, but I'm sure Christine is going to
I'll be around.
stick around. Thank you.